Rehoboam, you sure this inspection job won't be too hard? Inspecting all those nest tracks in the Mushroom Kingdom could be quite long.
Don't worry, Grookey, there's only 20 of them. We should be done by the evening.
Yeah, but they're pretty old. You think they're gonna be up to the norms?
Well, we're here to find out.
Rehoboam, the camera is on. Aren't you supposed to rank the tracks or something?
Oh, my bad. Hey guys, your captain is back. So in November of 2024, I started a new video series where I ranked the balls of each Mario Party game from worst to best. So recently, I asked myself, why not do this with Mario Kart? This sounded like a great idea, as Mario Kart is already one of my favorite game series ever, and it'd be easier than Mario Party since I already played all the games prior to it. Let's start with Super Mario Kart.
You really want to get views at this point?
Rookie, people do manage to get views with this game. And moreover, I think that many YouTubers are way too harsh on this one. A lot of them try to see it through modern standards, but it's important to put the game back into its context, which I'll talk about during the review. Just so you know right now, it only had 8 developers, and this number was already a god by the standards of the 90s, so imagine how hard it was to make a game by then. So it strives to be a multiplayer equivalent to F-Zero, but the limitations of the idea of transposing this genre to a two-player game forced Nintendo to entirely rethink the way they make the tracks during the development. We'll talk about this more when I make the review for the game, but for now, let's analyze the tracks. Understandably, after what I just said, a track like Mount Wario or Coconut Mall would have been unrealistic for a Super Nintendo, so I instead try to judge the codes for their actual quality, but also take into considerations the standard of the 90s that this game accommodated for. Let's start with the F tier, which are for the courses that I actually hate and that I'd avoid playing most of the time. So most of you are probably expecting me to put something like Choco Island 2, Vanilla Lake 2, Bowser Castle 2, or even Waluigi's number 2 in last place. While I can understand this opinion, I think the worst track in Super Mario Kart is Cooper Beach 2. For short, it's basically just a mix of the two problems most people have with the majority of the tracks in this game. It's both frustrating and boring. First, it's frustrating because the potholes in the middle of the track are just more annoying than anything. Many people hate this game in general due to how brutally difficult it is compared to your average modern Mario Kart game. While I can understand this complaint, I actually think that some of the harder tracks in this game are good because of that, as they are hard because they require a high level of skill.
Oh, good, because I was just trolling everyone who hates Super Mario Kart by saying they just have a skill issue. Should I continue?
No, Rookie, do not continue. So, what's the problem with these potholes? Well, it might indeed be skill issue on my part, or a problem with the sides of my TV screen, but most of the time, due to all the chaos in the track, I genuinely can't see the potholes on the track. Due to this, I end up falling in them and losing a ton of time while feeling like I didn't do any mistakes, and this is just one of the worst feelings ever in video games in general. But if the rest of the course was at least fun, it would at least salvage this problem. It isn't. It's really just a circle that you drift around with some cheap chips to avoid and some potholes. Honestly, I do have some nostalgia for the DS remake of this track, but this is clearly not a course I played more than once on the Super Nintendo. Also, why is this in the special cup? It's just a circle with not a lot of difficulty besides these potholes, and it's the case after Dawn Plains 3, which is arguably one of the hardest tracks in the whole series, and prior to this, you already went through some pretty complex tracks to test your skills, such as Mario Circuit 4, Bowser Castle 3, Bowser Castle 2, or even Warriors number 2. What's going on? So yeah, Cooper Beach 2 will have to take its place. Moving on.
White is the color of vanilla ice cream.
Yeah, I don't think many of you will be surprised by this. The Vanilla Lakes may be the most hated track types in the entirety of Super Mario Kart, and to me, Vanilla Lake 1 absolutely deserves its bad reputation. Just like Cooper Beach 2, it's just a circle.
Yet Donut Plains doesn't even have the honor to have its own circle.
And therefore it suffers the same problems. In a game like Super Mario Kart, the layout of a track can make all the difference for how it ranks, because this will dictate how satisfying it is to play a track flawlessly while going faster and faster and mastering this game's drifting system. With such a simple layout, it just doesn't kick. And the only thing of value this track has is two easy avoidable patches of water that are so easy to avoid I honestly forgot they even existed upon writing this segment, and ice blocks that will unavoidably disappear as the race goes on anyway. The only thing allowing this track to be harder than Cooper Beach 2 is that the obstacles aren't as frustrating as the aforementioned potholes, and I also really like the music. Like, it's severely underrated. I wish more people liked this music or at least gave a shit about it. But honestly, these are two tracks that I'd always avoid when playing this game. Luckily, these were surprisingly the only F tier courses this game has, which means that we're now going to the D tier. This is for tracks that are still really bad, but that I do have more redeeming qualities for them than the ones in F tier, meaning I can't really say that I hate them.
I am the great mighty Pooh.
Chalk Lion 2, and no, I won't make any 2-1 joke. Yep, this is far from being a popular track either. Many people already rank its remake dead last when ranking the tracks in Mario Kart DS, even putting it under the mundane Figure 8 circuit. And yeah, it's not a good track in Super Mario Kart either. I generally don't like when people just shit on an SNES track just because it's hard, but here, yeah, this one's very frustrating to get through. This time, I genuinely believe it's a layout issue rather than a skill issue. First, the road is very narrow, but if that was the only thing that made the track hard, it would be fine. However, it's paired with tight turns that you have to go through too quickly, which prevents you from drifting with ease here. Then, the mod is so slippery that it makes controlling where you go when you turn a hassle, and then it's followed by a tight turn. Honestly, this layout is just a collection of bad design decisions, and I'm not surprised at all that this track is so hated. I genuinely think I don't have anything to say about this track that hasn't been said already. Moving on.
Aren't you gonna talk about how the track looks like poop?
No, I won't. This joke has already been rehashed 1,000 times.
Well, too bad. I hijacked the segment to insert a joke about it anyway in the segment.
Grookey!
Bitch, I'm a
Wow, it's Cooper Beach. Wow. Honestly, there isn't much to say about this track either. It's a circle. It's themed around the beach, and apparently that beach belongs to Cooper.
I inserted a pun about it, by the way.
Why did I let you take over the editing? I don't even know what to say about this track. I guess I like the concept in theory, and island hopping race could have been really cool in this game, but yeah. It's basically just a pretty uneventful circle where the only obstacles are touches on much. And the cheats are basically irrelevant. I'm rerunning all the things to say about this track, which is a very ready for videos like this. Honestly, really cool concept, but the execution gave us one of the most boring tracks in the series. And if I wanted some island hopping on a circle, I would just rather play something like Shanghai Beach, cause it's on Wii. Wii is a banger. Also, that track at least has more obstacles, tracks that are at least relevant in the track, and a banger music theme. However, we're already moving to the C tier now. This is for the tracks that I don't really like, but I can't really call bad. In short, this is basically the tier for the meat tracks. Okay, so first, I gotta be honest, I'm not that much of a fan of the theme for the Ghost Valleys. There are 3 games that gave us tracks with this theme of a haunted bridge above a dark void with booze everywhere, and both Mario Kart 64 with Banshee Boardwalk and Super Circuit with Boo Lake and Broken Pier are way better at using this theme to create a great atmosphere for the haunted tracks and an eerie vibe than Super Mario Kart with its Ghost Valleys.
Actually, bridges are associated with ghosts in Japanese folklore due to several scary legends involving ghosts. Since Nintendo is Japanese, it actually makes perfect sense that they would use bridges for scary levels.
And to me, the weakest of these Ghost Valley tracks is easily the first one. It's a square, alright. I mean, I know it's the Mushroom Cops where one shouldn't have tracks that are too ambitious, but come on! This is the third course, and it's actually easier than both of the courses that you played prior to this one. There are some places where you can addedly fall off, but since most of them aren't placed near turns, this is most likely going to be irrelevant in your playthrough of this track. The only thing that saves this track is that at least it can partially cure this partially, be excused for its simplicity by being in the Mushroom Cup. Then, this feather shortcut is really cool and fun to pull off. It adds some difficulty to the track if you try to do it, but a cool shortcut that you won't have to occasionally pull off unless you have a very specific item isn't enough to salvage such a simple track from being mid, and that's clearly not a track that I played more than once during my playthrough.
Can you imagine Augustus flavored chocolate coated glue?
Choco Iron 1 is probably the final track of the bunch to basically be in the form of a circle or some other forgettable shape that basically has little to no turns most of the time. Finally! It only took us 5 tracks, surprisingly. Among the forgettable tracks in this game, this is easily the best one. It's not as frustrating as Choco Island 2 thanks to its wire turns, and the patches of
Mario's number 2.
the mod are more forgiving, while still being a challenge to warrant its place in the Flower Cup, even though I think this is a Mushroom Cup worthy track. Plus, there's a lot of potential for mushroom shortcuts, but yeah, it's still kind of a glorified circle that's so simplistic and boring that most of you are probably going to forget it even exists more often than not. Plus, it doesn't look really pretty, but since this is a general issue with the Choco Island theme rather than this track in particular, I won't at this point hold too much ground in the ranking. Luckily, we're now out of the C tier. From now on, the next courses are gonna be tracks that I actually like, and the B tier is just that. They're not amazing tracks per se, but more often than not, I have a good time when playing those courses.
Circuit?
Mario Circuit 1 is the very first course in the game, and in a way, since Super Mario Kart is the first game in the whole franchise, it's also the course that started everything. So understandably, I think all of us have at least a little bit of respect for this course. But does it still hold up as a starter track for the game? I think this might be a hot take, but I think so. Many starter tracks in Mario Kart often strive to be as simple and empty as they can be, with little to no obstacles, turns that often don't even try to test your skills, and a track length that overstays its welcome.
Except there's also Toad Circuit, baby!
However, this one's different. First, it's considerably shorter than other starter tracks. If you're good enough at the game, you can complete it in under 1 minute 20, which is very short. And the layout actually makes sense in the way that it introduces the driving system of this game. It's simple, being not much more than a simple B shape with easy turns, but it does a really good job at having you learn when you'd rather drift with wide or sharp turns, and when you'd better avoid it when the turns are too sharp or when the road is too tight for it. It also introduces mushroom shortcuts by allowing you to pull off one just there near the end of the track, and it's pretty satisfying to get through it. Plus, it's not completely empty, as you still have to be on the lookout for some pipe obstacles to avoid. Overall, this track's obviously not as ambitious as what came after, but for what it is, it's pretty good, and it deserves a good B tier.
As I walk through the valley of the shadow of
Ghost Valley 2 is, to put it simply, a much better version of Ghost Valley 1. First, while Ghost Valley 1's layout was too simple, being just a square with simple turns, Ghost Valley 2 is already way more complex despite being a Flower Cup track, from smooth, diagonal turns to sharp, tight turns that could make a roller coaster tycoon guest Peter Pan.
Toad Circuit looks too intense for me.
It also has a cool fair shortcut, and even though it's not as epic to pull off as the one in Ghost Valley 1, it's still pretty cool to get it right. This track is also hard, meaning you constantly have to focus to not hit the walls or fall off thanks to the wide variety of turns this track has, be they smooth or sharp, but also thanks to the fact that the places that don't have guardrails are places where you actually have to be careful instead of just unplugging your brain. Apart from that, this track is still basic with not a lot of obstacles, so I didn't want to put it too high either. But for all it's worth, it's a pretty cool haunted track, despite its simplicity.
Donuts.
Donut Plains 1 is the second track in the game, and to put it simply, it's a harder version of Mario Circuit 1. If you look at the two tracks layout without playing them, you might notice similarities in their layout. At least I did when I was a kid.
How many times should I say this? Your childhood nostalgia and your copium are not a reliable source.
But then, when you actually sit down and play the original versions, you realize both tracks play completely differently. While Mario Circuit 1 was still simple and voluntarily held it back for beginners to learn to play a Mario Kart game through its layout, Dawn's Plains 1 gives itself a bit more grounds to go wilder. The turns are way stronger and sharper, meaning you'll probably have your first filled turns of this track, as getting on the off-road can be really easy if you're not careful, especially for only being the second track in the game. There's also a cool mushroom shortcut here, near the beginning of the track. Also, apart from the grass, some of the off-road is actually mud that doesn't slow you down, but remains very slippery. But since you aren't forced to go for it, it works because it provides a risk-reward factor. You can choose to play it safe or take a tight turn to easily pass a couple of opponents if you control your cart well.
And also, it doesn't look like.
Okay, Rookie, you had your fun, but now I'm gonna take over the editing again. It's clear you just wanted to fuck around to recycle the same poo-poo joke over and over again.
You didn't think I would let you turn my house into a castle, did you?
Bowser Castle 1 isn't the Super Mario Kart track that has the best reputation. Oftentimes, the track is deemed as too simple to be really worthwhile playing. On one hand, I can understand this. The track layout is mostly just a glorified square with just 4 turns here preventing it from being as simple as something like Ghost Valley 1. But on the other hand, I think it still makes up for it with obstacles and a harder type of road. First, those square corners might look harmless, but when you start to try good performance and to take drifting into account, they will really become a challenge to be reckoned with.
Wow, they have it squared. No, seriously, I think SpongeBob would love this place.
Then, even though this course has a lot of straight lines, the developers had a lot of tricks up their skis for designing this one. First, it's full of thwomps that become active when the Act 2 starts. These thwomps immediately stop you in your rush if you hit them, so you gotta watch out for when they're gonna hit the ground and react accordingly depending on which thwomp will be in your way when you cross them. Then, the track also has some boost panels, creating a little risk-reward factor. It's still a very simple track at its core, and it lacks the ambition of tracks that are ranked higher, but for all it's worth, it remains really fun for Mushroom Cup track from the earlier games, at a time where this cup was more adamant of holding back the ambition than in more recent games. Now that we're halfway through the ranking, let us talk about Battle Mode. Even though it's not the main focus of the series, I'd be remiss if I totally skipped it, and I think it's still worth talking about such a staple in the series up to this point. So welcome to Rigaboom's mini battle map rankings. Jingle!
Rigaboom's battle map rankings, yeah, Rigaboom's battle map rankings. He's ranking battle maps, he's ranking battle maps. I am none of our favorites, so I just repeat his name. Rigaboom, 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 Rigaboom. Yeah, 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 Rigaboom's battle map rankings, yeah, Rigaboom's battle map rankings.
Rookie, please learn to write lyrics before I complete the writing of the video. Anyway, this battle mode is understandably not as elaborate as what came after. The only mode there is Balloon Battle, and in all the Mario Kart game up until Wii, the identity of this mode was an elimination-based game. It's the same elimination-based balloon battle as we know it here, where both players get 3 balloons, hitting your opponent with an item reduces their balloon count, and the game ends when there's only one person who still has balloons, and they become the winner. Except that here, you can only play with 2 players. I get that it was probably an amazing novelty at that time, but unlike the main racing mode, which I believe still holds up in several areas, there is no denying that this first battle mode really didn't age well. Nevertheless, let's rank its 4 battle maps. Number 4 is Battle Coast 4, which is based on Mario Circuit. This one was already remade in Wii, and in that game, it was better since there were 12 players.
And Rigaboom's also a bit nostalgia biased, let's not deny this.
This original version didn't really hit the spots though. It's way too big for 2 people, and you end up going for the same problem as in Mario Kart 8 original battle mode. You mostly just end up chasing your opponent as if you were playing the racing mode, which gets annoying really fast. I'd put it in D tier. Number 3 is Battle Coast 3. It's certainly the most unique battle course in that mode. First, it's based on Vanilla Lake. That means it's not only slippery, but it also has fragile ice blocks. That makes it a bit more interesting, because you actually have to take them into account when planning your strategy ahead. And it also means that those strategies will change over time as the battle gets long enough. But honestly, this is the only thing keeping this course from complete oblivion. I'd put it in C tier. Number 2 is Battle Course 1. Yep, the one that was remade in Mario Kart 8. It's based on donut planes and it actually has a really good deal of strategy. It also has L-shaped obstacles like Battle Course 4, but instead of 5 of them per set, it only has 2 of them, which makes them viable for defending yourself without turning into your average Coyote versus Roadrunner episode.
Actually, Roadrunners cannot outrun coyotes.
Those 2 pockets are also great for more strategy and can be so much fun to use to ambush your opponent. I'd put this battle map in B tier. And finally, number 1 is Battle Course 2. This one's based on Cooper Beach. This time, the track's also separated by a wide array of obstacles that make it very easy to shield yourself from items. But unlike Battle Courses 1 and 4, these sort of corridors have several breaches that still allow your opponents to get you without chasing you, meaning you can't just hide, you have to plan out your route well. Plus, you can even use your feathers to jump above them with jump ramps. I put it in the lower side of A tier. Very fun battle map, and I hope it gets remade in a future Mario Kart game. As we saw, this battle mode is a bit of a mixed bag. There are some really high highs and some really low lows. Again, it's clear they didn't figure out what they wanted to do with this mode yet, but for what it is, battle mode is still fun. Thank you to J Soldier Pro for testing it with me, by the way. It has been lots of fun to do this together, and I'm looking forward to do things like this again in the future.
These donuts are great! Jelly-filled are my favorite! Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut!
Now that we're done with the battle mode, let's continue the ranking. The next track on our list is Donut Plains 2, and just like Ghost Valley 2's better version of Ghost Valley 1, this course is kind of an improved version of Donut Plains 1. The first improvement is that even though the layouts look very similar from afar, Donut Plains 2 has a noticeably twistier layout, with more twisty and sharp turns that you have to take directly one after the other. Not only that, but the track also has some moves that you have to watch out for. If you touch one, they latch onto your cart and you have to shake them off so they stop stealing your coins.
Oh, so these mogs are politicians?
No, Grookey. But regardless, this track is still really fun. They really managed to make this track more complex than Donut Plains 1, while keeping it simpler than the courses that will come after this.
It's from Bowser!
Bowser Castle 3 is one of the most popular tracks in the game, and the reason is simple. In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, this track got one of the rare good SNES remakes that actually managed to give a good glow up to this course by remixing the music, improving the scenery, keeping it hard, and taking profit from the new mechanics Mario Kart introduced ever since this track first appeared, which incentivized many players to try and experience the OG version. Does it hold up? In my opinion, it does, and it does so pretty well in fact. First, it's one of the more diverse tracks. There are a lot of tight turns that are really not easy to go through and that make this course a real challenge. But unlike courses that I scanned because all of it remains pretty samey and repetitive, Bowser Castle 3 goes wild, with a section with several jumps that lead to split paths guaranteeing that every lap will be different. There's also a split path section through near the end of the track with boost panels and a small jump ramps, and the course also for small sharp turns that will force you to stay focused on the track.
I mean, playing while eating potato chips is really the best thing to do anyway.
So why isn't it an A tier? Well, I think this might surprise you given some of the tracks we haven't still seen yet, but it's the jankiness of the track. Some of these turns, with their square shape, can be hassle to take when they happen one after the other or right after a jump, which honestly makes them more frustrating than gratifying to take and makes the whole track feel kind of janky. For example, these turns right after the first split path section that will really not be ideal to take if you chose the left path. That's a bummer, because if there wasn't this problem, this could have easily been an A-tier track. But even then, it remains a fun track that shows Super Mario Kart can be fun and more grand too. Speaking of, we're now entering the A-tier courses. This is for the courses that I find very good, and that I'm always happy to replay regularly.
I evolved into a ghost type!
Ghost Valley 3 is the best course in the game to have this theme. And honestly, it's not even close. Being a special cup track, it's understandably much more complex than its mushroom cup and flower cup counterparts. Already, the layout has much higher difficulty. It has more turns, its shape is much more complex than a simple square, and the turns are more varied, alternating between sharp turns, diagonal turns, and semi-smooth turns. What especially makes this course distinct is the holes in the ground, because this course has a lot of holes. Big, big holes. No, I'm not making these jokes.
I had my hopes up for 2 seconds.
These holes in the ground can make it especially hard to drift while staying on the track, but that's also what makes it so good. You really feel proud when overcoming it while drifting a lot. Another thing I love with this track is near the end. If you're skilled at it, you can go on this boost panel to take a massive jump with the ramp that follows it and cut a big corner towards the end of the track. It can be hard to orient yourself well, but if you do, then this cut is so much fun to take. Easily the best shroomless shortcut in the whole game. Along with this, there's also a cool fair shortcut that's a bit more discreet than in the previous two Ghost Valley tracks, but that can save you a bit of time if you take it well. Though it's also harder, since we're also gonna have to brake and turn immediately after landing, and to me, it's not really worth taking this one if you're not sure of what you're doing. But regardless, it's a fun shortcut to take. In short, this track is so varied in a game limited by weaker hardware that it's honestly quite admirable. There's a lot of things to do here, from a huge variety of turns, diverse shortcuts, and holes to avoid, which warrants this course a place in the A tier.
Green is not a creative color.
Just like Ghost Valley 3, Donut Paint 3 is also a special cup track that's very different from its two predecessors in the Mushroom and Flower Cup, and it's also my favorite track of this archetype. Donut Panes 1 and 2, for all of their tight turns and slippery ground, remain more simple more than anything. However, Donut Panes 3 is much harder. First, it has long bridges that go over big lakes, and since they're placed not too long after turns, they can be quite hard to stay on. Plus, another curveball this track throws is mandatory bunny hopping. Up until this point, bunny hopping has been something that really helped you if you were able to master it, but that wasn't necessary. You could finish in first place without it. But in this course, you're forced to bunny hop if you want to get over this bridge without falling in the water.
Chef Rias would be proud.
On top of that, the track is much harder than its two predecessors, with much tighter turns and windy roads, while the turns in Donut Plains 2 and especially 1 were much more forgiving. Plus, this time, you can't avoid the slippery road. It's directly on your path, no matter where you go. So since it's winding a bit, you have to manage to use the slippery path at your best use, and make sure to not be shoved in the grass.
Or you can just use the off-road.
Yay! Grass!
Yeah, if you hate winning, that works too. But anyway, on top of that, it brings those moles back from Donut Plains 2 as well, and there are also a bit more of them, meaning that you will also have to be careful on the final stretch of the course because they can really cost you some pace if you're not careful. Overall, Donut Plains 3 is a great course for this game that brings you a fair challenge and really warrants its placement in the Special Cup by showing you that this one won't play around, and that you need some true skills at playing this game to overcome this final challenge.
There is no ice! There's never been any ice! Ice is just a myth!
I think many people will be surprised seeing that this track almost made it to the top 5 tracks in this game, given that I slandered Vanilla Lake 1 and both of the Cooper Beach tracks for being circles, and that Vanilla Lake 2 is also a circle. But despite its simple layout that doesn't really warrant it being the penultimate track in the fucking game, this one had a lot of tricks up its sleeves to be special in spite of that. First, this track's already a bit harder, because just going round in circles like Cooper Beach 1 won't be enough. The developers put walls and bigger stretches of water to make sure you quickly understand that it's not a good idea to do this on this track. Then, the ice blocks are this time way harder to avoid. On one hand, it can be frustrating, but on the other hand, it makes the course more challenging than just a simple circle. However, the best part of this track is the ice parkour. Since this track is just a lake with big stretches of water, it incentivizes you to master bunny hopping, because if you don't, you can still play it safe and stay far from the water, which still requires you to turn a bit on the slippery ice due to the walls. But if you do try to do this, that's where the fun begins, as you will have to time your jumps over the water well, because otherwise you lose a lot of time, because in this game, when you fall in the water, you have a bit of time to go back on the ground by yourself before Act 2 picks you up, which is actually disadvantage because it can make you lose even more time. It's still quite simple for a special cup, and I want to have a talk with whoever thought putting this as a penultimate track in the special cup was a good idea. Also, who the fuck put bananas between the icebergs in the versus race version? But even then, it's still a fun track, despite how anticlimactic it is that this is what leads you right away to Rainbow Road. Speaking of which, Rainbow Road is the most popular track in the game and the most iconic one too. Even almost 35 years later, it remains a track that most Mario Kart fans know and love, even the ones who have limited knowledge of the older games. And yeah, it's iconic for a very good reason. Even in a game that's on average harder than the rest of the series, Rainbow Road stands out as a real challenge, and to this day, one of the hardest tracks in the series. Previous cups ended with a Mario circuit, which even with layouts that got crazier and crazier in each cup, still had a fairly standard overarching gameplay that allowed you to breathe after Bowser's castle. But Rainbow Road doesn't let you make any mistakes. Not only is the road super tight, but there are no guardrails here. Even on tracks like Wii or 7th Rainbow Road, the game is a bit more merciful to at least put some. But here, you already have to master turning perfectly if you don't want to fall. Plus, the swamps are even more dangerous, because while they simply stop your momentum in Bowser castles, Rainbow Road swamps are a different kind that actively make you unable to control your kart for a bit. This track alone defines the identity of most Rainbow Roads later on. Except you, and you. You suck. Go away. Now. Fuck you!
Does anyone remember the Armix Rainbow Road anyway?
This track is brutal, but unlike Cooper Beach 2 or Choco Island 2, the difficulty stems from unintentional track design. It's made to be hard, but that difficulty feels fair as you can easily breathe through the track without problems when you get really good at the game, which will therefore be more gratifying than in the aforementioned courses where difficulty could often stem from developer oversight. Overall, Rainbow Road is not my favorite track in the game, but it's still a great one, and it's impossible to deny how much this track alone did for the series as a whole by defining the whole identity of how Mario Kart would end their games, by mixing magical atmospheres, high difficulty, high speed, and epic music, even if it's not quite my favorite track in Super Mario Kart.
Circuit?
Mario Circuit 3, the course that Nintendo brought back the most out of every single course in the series while 4 gets sidelined. Yeah, people often criticize the fact that this track keeps coming back in the later games while other Super Mario Kart courses that have more interesting themes or gimmicks never got a chance to be in a game other than Mario Kart Tour.
And then again, Tour is Tour.
But there's actually a reason why it has been remade so often. Despite being the final track in the Flower Cup, it was the first track ever made in the series. When the developers made tests for the game's engine, it was with this track, until it was repurposed to be the final track in the Flower Cup. So I agree that it has become annoying to see this course constantly come back instead of other Super Nintendo tracks which deserve their time to shine. I think it's still understandable why the developers love this track so much.
Okay, I just got a call. Sonic fans who are fed up with Green Hill being milked want to speak with you.
But what about the gameplay itself? Well, even though its remix will be very boring, the original version is actually not half bad. The layout is cool, with a mix of smooth symmetrical turns and sharper turns along with a hairpin turn in the middle and some mushroom shortcuts. I guess that hairpin turn could be a bit smoother, but the rest of the tracks is not too hard, not too easy for this cup. It's not as complex as other tracks later on, but it's still a challenge, and managing to take those turns flawlessly without losing speed is just so satisfying. So yeah, it kind of slaps. That said, even though this track is A tier, it's still simpler and not as memorable as the top 3, hence why it's only number 4. Meanwhile, the top 3 tracks managed to be satisfying to overcome while having a more varied layout and being more memorable.
You got trolled, Dad.
And here's to another course placement that is probably going to surprise most people who watch my videos. Bowser Castle 2, the 4th course in the Flower Cup, and sadly, one of the most hated, if not the most hated track in the history of the series. Seriously, I literally see more people defending Sonic 2006 than this track.
Good, good. You're catering to people who are more into Sonic as well.
That said, personally, it always made me sad to see that this course is that infamous among the community. Granted, as you probably understood with this video by now, I have a much more favorable view of Super Mario Kart than most people who do ranking videos like this, but even within the realm of more negative rankings, it consistently scored in the bottom, and I've got a lot of people considering to be the worst track in the series. Yeah, it goes that far. And in a way, I still get why it's hated. Understandably, in the Flower Cup, you'd expect tracks that pump the difficulty and ambition of the game up a bit, but that you wouldn't really call hard. But after simpler tracks like Choco Island 1, Ghost Valley 2, or even the windier but still laid back Donut Plains 2, Bowser Castle 2 can be very, very brutal. First, once again, it has 90-degree turns that do get some time to get used to. The forms that start moving on lap 2 can also be surprisingly difficult to avoid if you're not used to the controls of that game. Also, some turns come right after the other, like in this roundabout section, making drifting here a huge challenge. But that's not the reason why this course is so hated. It actually has elements that no other track in the series has done so far. Here in the course, there's a troll path, which is literally a complete dead end disguised as a regular turn. I tried to cross over it with a feather, and even if it was hard, I ended up making it. But honestly, the timing to manage this shortcut is so pixel perfect to the point that I doubt it was even intended as a shortcut.
Wow, making stupid pranks before it was trendy on social media. You gotta give Super Mario Kart credit for that.
So I understand these complaints, and I actually agree with the last one. This dead end is stupid, and throwing people like this is rather artificial difficulty more than anything. And honestly, once you know about it the first time, it's very easy to steer clear of it, so it's not even gratifying. But for the rest of the track, I'm gonna say something that honestly surprised me too upon playing this track for the first time. That brutality actually adds to the charm of the track.
Reboom, reboom, reboom. You made the fatal mistake of explaining yourself with the C word.
Okay, I think I didn't convince you here. My point is, the constant difficulty means that this is a track that never stops the action, and I honestly love it when we get a Mario Kart track where we never stop the chaos, and this track certainly delivers on that aspect. Between the difficult turns, the series of jumps, and the roundabouts, it almost feels like a roller coaster ride.
Flat roller coaster ride. The excitement's not the same.
Have fun. Have fun. Have fun or I drown you, guess 434!
But even then, it still feels fair. Like in the end, what's truly required to master this course is skill, and apart from the fake route, the rest of the track is mostly skill based in a way that being screwed over will remain a skill issue more than anything. Therefore, it really makes it fun when you finally manage to master it, but also gratifying to overcome. I would really love if this track came back, because I think an upgraded version of it could really be amazing, and it would also be allow people to see it in a new light. So please, Nintendo, give it a second chance.
You know there's a 0.000000000000001% that they watch your video.
Mario Circuit 2 is one of the most popular tracks in the game, and probably the most unique track in it too. Yes, even more unique than Rainbow Road. The reason is simple. This track has a big jump near the end of it. Generally, the biggest jumps, like the one you can take in Ghost Valley 3 that I mentioned earlier, remain optional and are more shortcuts rather than anything else. This is the first ever track in the series with a mandatory jump, which is already very ambitious for the first game. And I'm sure kids back in 1992 were dumbfounded by this jump when playing this course. Nowadays, it's obviously not that special, seeing that those kinds of jumps are basically staples in the franchise at this point. But in a game without elevation, it's absolutely a big deal. First, it's placed well so that the jump isn't just made for hype. The developers made sure to place it before a turn, meaning that it's also a test of skills. You actually have to be reactive and to master your drifting right after jumping, on top of angling your trajectory well to land in a favorable spot. Plus, the course even has a small shortcut that's really hard to take, as it involves jumping on that little ramp right behind a wall right after a jump, but that's so satisfying to master.
Back when people were satisfied without kinetic sand.
And the rest of the course is good too. First, the layout is well adapted for the Mushroom Cup, as since it's the final track, it allows for a good difficulty bump. It has some smooth turns and also turns that are sharper, but not too tight, so you get used to alternating between the two. It also has some great mushroom shortcut potential, and you can use several mushrooms for shortcuts in just one lap, which is really amazing. All of this to say, Mario Circuit 2 is a really great track that warrants the placement as a Mushroom Cup finale, and even ended up defining what the Mushroom Cup finale would be in later games. Mario Circuit 4, the track that Nintendo still won't remake for some reason. Honestly, the first time I played this course, I just knew this would be top 5 in the game, but I don't think it struck me how amazing this track is for the Super Nintendo right away. But replaying it, it's honestly the pinnacle of Super Mario Kart track design for a simple reason. It has a challenging and complex layout, but it's also so satisfying to overcome. For how gratifying it was to play Mario Circuit 3 perfectly, it remained a more repetitive track, with a symmetric layout and turns that were the same. However, on the contrary, Mario Circuit 4 layout is very varied, while using a diverse set of turns. Sometimes it can be very smooth, like in the start of the track. Other times, it's sharp but wide, like here, and there's even a tight hairpin in the middle, but that's still way more manageable and reasonable than the one in Mario Circuit 3, and a wavy set of turns at the end. In a way, it almost feels like a better version of Mario Circuit 3, like if Mario Circuit 3 was the prototype and Mario Circuit 4 was the real complete track, with more variety, a higher difficulty, and especially a more diverse set of challenges to overcome if you want to master this track. And for me, that's how you make a good track when it comes to this game, which can understandably not count on majestic scenery or her epic glider section on an SNES. And that makes sense, seeing the original code of this game as, here's a fun fact, this was actually meant to be the final course of the game before developers decided to invent Rainbow Road, which then replaced the Choco Island free track.
Yeah, I don't think fans will skip over this track being scrapped.
And if Mario Circuit 4 was a finale like it was planned, it would have honestly been a pretty cool final gauntlet despite being a circuit. With the variety of this track, the pipes are honestly not easy to avoid, the fast pace of this track, and the twisty turns. Overall, this course perfectly understood how to be varied, despite having to be more simple than something that would be in Mario Kart 7 or Mario Kart Wii, and that is why it's my favorite Super Mario Kart course. That was a hard inspection when those tracks were built almost 35 years ago, but at least we're done now.
Wait, you're not ending the video here?
Well, no, first I gotta do the review.
Oh, okay.
We're already done ranking every track in Super Mario Kart, but before ending the video, I'm going to share my thoughts on the game as usual. This is certainly one of the more complicated review segments I had to write, because of all the game I reviewed so far, this is certainly the one that requires the most historical context. Indeed, as I said, many Mario Kart YouTubers are often very harsh on the game, putting the majority of the tracks in C tier or D tier, and often putting barely a quarter of the selection in B tier or above. But personally, I think people kind of overreact about the notion that the game is fully unplayable today. Again, I know this argument has been milked by people to defend their childhood game, but you gotta replace yourself in the historical context. This was made by 8 people, which was already a pretty big number at that time, on a 16-bit console, in the goal of achieving something that at the time was virtually never done before. That's being created a racing game with a multiplayer mode while also making it fair by giving a chance to beginners to use items to catch up to experts, at a time where gaming was elitist and rarely thought about the casual players. Obviously, it's not realistic to expect this game to have elaborate tracks like 3DS Rainbow Road or Airship Fortress. So instead, you may have remarked that oftentimes I rather judge the courses for their layout, how gratifying they are to overcome, and how creative they are within the limits of a console like the SNES. And that's not for nothing. In a game where all the tracks are flat and Nintendo was forced to make track themes repeat themselves, the courses that shine the most are the ones with layouts that are challenging yet fair to make you proud of overcoming them, and the ones that have a surprising gimmick that is pretty much exclusive to them even 35 years later and that execute it well, like Mario Circuit 2 with the jump that is actually more dangerous than trick ramps in later games, Ghost Valley 3 and its unique shortcuts, Donut Plains 3 with some mandatory bunny hopping sequences, still today the only ones in the whole series, or Vanilla Lake 2 with the Ice Power Core and Ice Blocks. Oftentimes, these are gimmicks that we will likely never see again outside of these tracks remakes in the Mario Kart Super Circuit Extra Track section. And on one hand, it's sad because some of these gimmicks have a real room for glow up. But on the other hand, it confirmed Nintendo's strategy worked. Some of these tracks managed to stay unique, at least for me, even 35 years later. Now, what about the difficulty? Well, I think it's fine. This may be surprising for you to hear because many YouTubers have often considered the game to be too hard, but I think that when you really try to get used to the controls of the game, be it by picking more beginner-friendly characters like Total Koopa, by lowering the speed of the game, or even by practicing harder courses on time trial first, it becomes more intuitive and less frustrating. At least, that was my experience, and to people who tried Super Mario Kart and dropped it quickly because it was too hard, I'd still recommend you to try what I did, because I honestly think it can certainly help. But even then, even if the game is obviously brutal for a Mario Kart game by Mario standards, or even by the standards of a game like Wii or DS that released barely 10 to 15 years later, you have to remember how revolutionary Super Mario Kart was. Compared to something like Street Fighter, this game was genuinely intuitive for its time. Anyone could virtually have fun of it quickly just with the item system that allowed games to become fun even for a beginner rather than frustrating or confusing. Once again, it was revolutionary because at this time, if you weren't an expert at gaming, you were just left behind. It was all or nothing. Either you are a master or you can't even win one game on easy mode. Not only did Super Mario Kart break this mentality, it also managed to balance it with some elements that still made the game appealing to experts. Drifting is never mandatory in this game, except for Donut Plains 3, but doing it will give you a massive advantage if you master this mechanic. The character roster may look ridiculous compared to what we're used to today, but when it comes to gameplay rather than just having which characters are in the game in general, it's well balanced, with Mario and Luigi having good stats without having anything great either, making them a good middle ground, Peach and Yoshi being slower but recovering faster if they use their speed, making them good for beginners, Toad and Koopa being a good beginner-friendly alternative to the aforementioned characters by focusing on gentler handling, and DK and Bowser being much harder to handle with mistakes being much more punishing with them, but having a speed start that's high enough that playing flawlessly with them feels rewarding because it means outperforming your opponents much more easily. However, of course, the game has bad aspects too. First, some of the tracks, even with Nintendo's best efforts, remain boring or frustrating due to bad track design, often due to roads being way too tight, gimmicks working on paper but being more frustrating than anything in practice. I can cite a pocket full of flaws too. Notably, sometimes, with some of the tracks, when you go from Mario Circuit to Cooper Beach, I almost don't feel like I'm playing the same game due to how different and irregular the layouts can be. Yes, variety can also be a strength, but here it's at the cost of an overarching identity for the game. It's clear and normal that they haven't figured out what they wanted to do with the series yet when developing this game, or, for that matter, if it was going to be a series at all, but it can still plague your game experience a bit. However, these flaws remain not too big, and overall, I wouldn't say they make the game outright bad, and even with those, I'd say it holds up pretty well. At least, it's better than Mario Party 1, that's for sure. Really, I could go on and on, but let's end the review on this thesis. Super Mario Kart was a revolution for its time, and honestly, it did so much for gaming as a whole that I find it hard to understand that someone wouldn't at least respect it a bit. It changed everything in so many aspects of gaming, be it how to appeal to casual players too, or how to make a middle ground between casual and hardcore. It also reinvented racing games to make them way more fun and to have a subgenre that's more relaxed than the classics Top Gear or F-Zero. It popularized the notion of spin-offs for your characters to the point that they would become a staple for Mario with Mario Party or Mario Tennis, or even for other characters like Sonic with Sonic Racing Crosswords, or even Pokemon games with Mr. Dungeon. And in a way, I think that this is also thanks to this game that Super Smash Bros. Exists as well. Yeah, come to think about it, it's crazy that Super Mario Kart, that we sometimes love to hate, has still did so much for the industry, which alone warrants this game a good beat here. And for that, I only have one thing to say. Thank you, Super Mario Kart. This video is now over. Honestly, even though Super Mario Kart obviously didn't age that well, I still had fun playing it for this video and discovering the game as it was in 1992 while also trying to get good at it, which was sometimes easier said than done, but still. And I can't wait to rank the next games in the series too. The next one is going to be Mario Kart 64, the second game in the series, and the first one to be released in 3D. Yep, just for that, it's probably going to be an interesting ranking to do as well. So until then, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.
Bye bye.